Hello and welcome to Drive Steady. Being big Corvette fans, we're going Corvette crazy this week as the mid-engine reveal is coming up very soon. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the mid-engine Corvette, ask some questions, and make a prediction or two. Starting off, Chevrolet has been trying to do the mid-engine Corvette since forever. Zora Arkus Duntov tried with the C3 and the Aerovette. Then Chevrolet tried again in the 90s with the C5 base serve design, and again while planning the transition from the C6 to the C7. If you're not aware, Chevrolet was planning on the C7 being a mid-engine layout. However, with the economic issues and the bailout, that plan was tabled and the budget for the C7 was cut. Also, probably why you're seeing a pretty short C7 generation, only 5 years from 2014 to 2019, and typically Corvette generations eclipse that 5-year mark and are closer to 6 or 7 years. So now finally, we're at the doorstep of the C8. In my opinion, two things really push the mid-engine discussion over the top. First, and probably the most overlooked, is that the economy is doing somewhat well right now. Chevrolet is probably projecting that it continues to do well after the mid-engine is revealed, which I think will have an effect on the C8 price, but we'll talk about that in a second. And the second reason is that the front-engine layout was reaching its potential. Now, I know Corvette test driver Jim Merrill had his reservations about moving to the mid-engine layout, stating that the current front engine still has some potential to push the performance envelope further. And I'm fine with that. I'm not arguing against it, as I also agree that there could be some potential there. However, tying to the first point with the economy, I think moving to the mid-engine now future-proofs the Corvette for hopefully another 50 or 60 years. It's more of a timing and money thing, of course. Why kick the can down the road when you've got a nice opportunity now to move to a more popular and more scalable layout? Let's transition now to my questions. Call them hopes or wishes or whatever. Most important question for me: how much will it cost? The 2019 base Stingray cost $55,900. I don't think anyone will argue that the C8 mid-engine Corvette will be a more expensive car. What I typically do is I like to look at what Porsche is doing, because Corvette, and everyone else for that matter, has been following Porsche's marketing and pricing schemes. So Porsche sells a mid-engine Cayman and Boxster for $56,000 and $59,000 respectively. Obviously, they also have the 911. The base 911 Carrera has a price tag of $91,100. This is, of course, the 991.2 generation, and there is no model or pricing of the new 992 generation. For perspective, the entry-level 992 generation of the 911 is the Carrera S, and it starts at $113,000. I believe the Corvette is a higher-tier car versus the Cayman and the Boxster, so therefore it will cost more than the $59,000 Boxster. The more interesting conversation is the 911. When you compare the current base price of the $56,000 Stingray versus the $91,000 911 Carrera, the price difference is to the tune of 62% increase for the 911. To predict the mid-engine price, let's back into it using the 992 MSRP of $113,000. 62% of $113,000 is roughly $70,000. Now, in my opinion, Chevrolet can go in two directions with this. First, they can surprise everyone and price the C8 under $70,000. I think that would be a bargain price, considering when Porsche releases the 992 model Carrera, the base model, it will come in at around $100,000, and Ford also just released the GT500 at $71,000. Obviously, on the flip side, they can command the premium for it and price it closer to $75,000. I don't think it will go higher than $75,000 because a current generation Z06 has a base price of $80,000, and if they go over that $75,000 price, they risk upsetting the Corvette crowd. So in my opinion, it's either $68,000 or $69,000 or $75,000. Next question: engine and weight. So these two things go hand in hand in my opinion. I've seen leaks of the LT2, which should be an upgraded version of the LT1, but is Corvette going to surprise some people? I don't know, the sound clip they have on the website sounds a little vague. Now, I don't really care much about the horsepower as long as it's closer to 500. Something between 485 and 510 should be adequate. Now, tying that into the weight discussion, I'm sure the C8 is going to have more safety technology and just more technology in general, so that should constitute to more weight. Here's one thing to consider that might eliminate some of the weight from the C7 going onto the C8, and that is the transaxle front end design layout, which sends power from the engine in the front to the back of the car where the transmission is. Eliminating the front engine and having the engine in the back should get rid of some of that extra componentry needed to make the C7 layout, front engine, rear transmission, transaxle work. So let's see what the weight will come in at. If the weight stays the same, around 3,500 pounds, I think 485 horsepower to 510 horsepower should be fine. Now, if the weight is closer to 3,700 or 3,800 pounds, I think you've got a problem, and the horsepower would probably need to increase or be on the upper end of that 510 horsepower range. Staying on the engine topic, and that is the layout. Is it truly going to be a mid-engine layout? Will the engine be in front, on top, or behind the rear axles? It should be interesting to see the direction that Chevrolet is taking. In my opinion, I bet it's in the front of the rear axle. Next question, will it get a manual? At an initial glance, it looks like the C8 will only launch with a dual clutch transmission, but my gut is telling me that the C8 will get a manual. I'm thinking they're launching it with the dual clutch initially to test the market. Being that most Corvettes today are sold with an automatic, it gives them good reason to test out this hypothesis. However, much like Porsche and what they're doing with the 992, they've promised their customers a manual transmission in the 992 generation, and I think Corvette will eventually offer the manual for the C8 generation as well. And I certainly hope they do that because the manual transmission will just enhance the driving experience. My last wish or question is, will the coupe version of the C8 keep the Targa top? One really intriguing part about the Corvette has always been that the coupe version has a removable hardtop. I'm not sure what that means with the mid-engine and if it will continue or not. One reason it could be eliminated is due to storage space. The C7 has a pretty big trunk to get your top in and still have extra storage space for your other belongings. With the C8, the engine would obviously be in the back, therefore the trunk or the frunk would now be in the front of the car. I'm not sure you'll be able to get a removable hardtop in the front of the mid-engine design, considering that mid-engine layouts usually have a smaller sized front end. So those are my thoughts on the mid-engine. I know there's a lot of anticipation around this car, and rightfully so, with the history of the Corvette and the constant attempts of making the mid-engine a reality. I think the birth of the mid-engine Corvette is the biggest car event in the 21st century so far. That's all I've got. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the C8 and cannot wait to see it in person very soon. We'll be going live on YouTube to watch the event, so I'm inviting you to come over and share the unveiling with us. Thanks for watching. Until next time, drive steady.